All right, so let's say you had a dog called AlphaStar and it peed on the carpet. What would you do to get it to stop? Actually, let's go better yet. How would you get it to build oracles instead? For me, I've always felt training a machine learning bot feels like training a pet. You're trying to get it to produce a result, and sometimes it's just gonna do whatever it wants. But remember back when AlphaStar played Mana and TLO? So we're gonna go back to a conversation Endersword and I had with GM player Hjax, who is also a past ProBots champion with Kagamine, the anime bot. Right after, we all got together to watch replays and we got into the philosophy behind how to get a machine learning bot to do what you want or what you don't want.
So maybe you could tell us what kind of weaknesses do you notice, at least if this is the first 1 week training period of AlphaStar. What weaknesses do you point out right away?
So it doesn't actually scout much. It has no idea what tech TLO has gone for this game.
So is it kind of like blind countering?
I also feel like it doesn't care.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was gathering. Is it's so confident in its micro that it's basically like people were saying, well, how will this AI make good strategic decisions with the fog of war? And it seems like the answer was it doesn't have to if it out micros you.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Endersword and I were talking about this after screen, where it does kind of just brute forces its way to victory. Yeah. It doesn't need to think of new strategies. It's like, if I just out micro you, you'll lose.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, the games it was playing against Mana, where it's like, all right, you built like 7 immortals, so just more stalkers then. And it works.
It did work, right?
Yeah.
And because the immortals should, in theory, decimate stalkers, but like, you know, it just flash microed its way out. It didn't matter. So,
exactly.
So you mentioned it being confident. How does that translate into a computer's, like to a bot's language in terms of confidence? Is it more like, I've seen this done 1,000 times after my first initial scout, is like I should win with a probability of XYZ, or does it just like doesn't even take into consideration?
So the thing about AIs is they don't feel fear. So they don't know what the difference is between a really risky, scary play and a like really easy to make play. All they know is that it's the right thing to do. So they will do things where you're like, what the heck are you thinking? That's crazy. And it was like, but that was the best move. And you're like,
kind of like the ramp in, was it Mana's game where he just,
it just goes up the ramp. Yeah. No human would ever do that, but it caught Mana with his pants down because it was surprising.
Yeah.
Also, TLO is dying to DTs.
Yeah. This is another play too, that it's able to make that decision to go DTs, which again is sometimes this will really work and sometimes it will get completely shut down.
And so isn't that a level of where it made the optimum strategy choice rather than, you know, are we not seeing an example of making sort of the optimum strategy versus just brute force micro?
Shouldn't your strategy be informed by your opponent's strategy though?
True.
Yeah, it's not based on anything.
Okay, but like it has contacted itself with
it has a strategy it likes, but it doesn't seem to care much about what its opponent's doing. It's just like, if I do my thing well enough, I'll win.
Which is also, when you listen to the guys from Google explain it, that was kind of what they said, is there's 5 different agents that they picked that were just the most stable strategy. If I do this, it wins against the most things.
And like each agent represents something from the the Alpha League?
AlphaStar League.
AlphaStar League. So like each agent represents one that has made it through to the top of that league. And each one represents a strategy that they thought was optimal.
Right, but like this particular bot I imagine will always do this blink build with the DTs.
How do you suppose the reward module, I will call it, the way it perceives a reward is different than say what we do with some of the ProBots?
I mean, just let it. Well, the way it perceives a reward, right? It gets a cookie when it wins.
Right.
Yeah.
So for a best of 7 series, you can say, well, you get a cookie when you win the best of 7 series.
A whole cookie? Or do you do like sort of progressive?
I mean, you could also reward winning individual games, but or give like a big cookie if you win the series, because at first they wouldn't use the state information, right? You'd make it exposed to them, but they'd be like, I don't really know what to do with this. I'm going to do my all-in. And eventually there would be one that learned if you kept track of your opponent all-in you and built a bunch of cannons or something, right? You would win that game. And it'd go, wait, this is useful. And it would start to make progress towards it, right? Because it would get the big cookie.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I like using cookies for machine learning analogies.
It makes sense.
Oh, I feel like cookies is because when we think of machine learning, we think of them like children, right? So like that's how you would reward kind of like a kid for doing something good. You'd offer it a cookie. So I think that's an analogy.
And it's like, and people often will even underestimate how much an AI thinks that way. It's literally its only motivation. If you don't give it a cookie, it will sit there. It doesn't do anything. So, and it will often times where you try and do like rewards through the game, like you try and incentivize it to do something beyond just the win, it will exploit that to do that thing. So you ultimately have to get it down to a point where it's only based on win-loss.
Now, the bots, have I always understood, always hit the path of least resistance.
Yeah. Easiest route to cookie.
Easiest route to cookie.
Yeah.
How many, from your observations, Hjax, how many like easiest routes to cookies has AlphaStar taken?
I'm surprised it's not cannon rushing.
Yeah.
I remember them saying that at some point it was cannon rushing, so maybe it just has good cannon rush defense now, or at least good enough cannon rush defense that it's hard to beat it with a cannon rush. It's easier to beat it with Mass Stalker.
Yeah.
Is it possible that it just played so many games that it phased the concept of cannon rushing out of its existence?
Yeah, it eventually stopped winning with cannon rush and said, well, crap, I gotta do something else now.
Yeah.
And then it went gate first and made a bunch of stalkers and won that way, and went, I can do this.
So TLO has this is
a silly game.
Yeah, this is kind of I could see this is game 5, right? So he's trying something.
He's just Hail Marrying.
but it's caught. Yeah, it's caught already.
It saw it.
Yeah, it saw it. Except it's AlphaStar's doing the same thing to TLO, and TLO doesn't see it.
Yeah.
How does this happen? Like, it's really weird that now, is this something like this is very like Black Mirror-esque where it's like, TLO's like, I'm going to do the sneaky strategy of proxy hiding in your shadow, and AlphaStar is like, I too will hide a proxy in your shadow. Like, what are the chances of that exact thought pattern lining up out of 1 out of 5 games? Like, it just
luck. It's just luck.
Yeah.
So AlphaStar has seen that its opponent has gone double Stargate Phoenix, and he has no defenses whatsoever in his main base. And 4 Phoenixes are about to fly in and kill a bunch of probes, but there could have been like 6 or 8 Phoenixes by now and kill even more.
I see what you mean. So is there, we've talked about it even in ProBots, that bots have this level of self-preservation and what have you. Is there a level of which AlphaStar will not ignore that self-preservation, where it will, like, if it's under attack, it will always return? Like, there will not be an opportunity of which it will just ignore the attack and continue?
I mean, in theory it could learn that, but it didn't display any indication it can do that.
Right. So chances are, like, if you said if TLO had like these Phoenixes that were constantly harassing, it would always take, AlphaStar would always make or well, not always, but these iterations of AlphaStar would make that jump to constantly go back to their base no matter what, because it's self-preserving itself. It wouldn't ignore that.
Well, and TLO's Stargates have been idle for a solid 4 minutes now.
Yeah.
And like, he has these 2 Phoenixes, and AlphaStar is content to leave its whole army at its front and have 0 defense for Phoenixes. So like, why didn't he just stick to the 2 Stargate Phoenix plan? Like, AlphaStar has no indication that he hasn't stuck to it, but like, he would have killed so many probes if he just kept making Phoenixes. Instead, he's like donating his Phoenixes.
And going into 2-base carrier with upgrades and everything. Yeah,
So-
it is a bit baffling to do this, but yeah. I think the one game that we did see, and I think it was again the last it was the last mana game, when he went in to kill the natural, the army wouldn't engage him. And I think that is where it was valuing the life of the army, or like it knew it wasn't going to win the engagement, and he wouldn't even choose to defend his own base. So it lost the game. I mean, it was probably going to lose regardless, but it chose to not even fight instead of trying to defend itself.
Yeah, well, why? So it was looking like, if you look at it, you could say, I'm going to lose my natural if I don't kill this army.
Yeah.
But if I fight with my army, I'm going to
lose everything.
I'm going to lose my army and my natural. So I guess I just don't fight.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of which it makes sense, like, for it.
It does. It makes sense. There's times where every individual decision makes sense, but the net decision doesn't make sense. But where you could say, like he said, I'm going to lose my natural, or I'm going to lose my natural and the army. But there's also no condition in which I lose the natural and still win the game anyway. So I might as well try and win. But I think it doesn't make that last part sometimes.
Well, I'm sure there are situations where it can't win the fight now, but if it has, 30 more seconds to make units,
then it could do so. Yeah.
Does it make that deduction where it takes that probability of?
It must
not directly.
Yeah,
it's not like it's thinking directly that. It just goes, I know I can't win the fight now, and if I run away, sometimes I win the game. It doesn't really know why.
Yeah,
it
doesn't.
Sometimes I win the game.
Based off of probability of the past.
Yeah. Historically, when I run away from this army, I win more.
Mothership.
There is a mothership.
The real showcase is just that it's at least close to this level. Like, it's playing a game with a pretty high level of sophistication compared to what we saw 2 months ago.
One thing I do notice about AlphaStar versus anything else I've ever seen is that it dives. It dives a lot.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating to me that it does this weird thing. It does this to TLO multiple times where it pulls you in and then dives you. It pulls you in and then targets something specific and dives. And like, how would you, Hjax, kind of like explain that?
So
Just learned behavior.
I mean, yeah, it learned that wins more. But so one thing that's kind of spooky for humans when you're playing against a computer like this, and I remember the people that were playing against OpenAI 5, the Dota bot, were saying it. Mm-hmm. If you think you're okay, right? And then it starts confidently marching towards you, and you go, oh crap, this computer knows something I don't. Right? It's because it's not going to be wrong, right? It's done the math. Why is it charging at me? Oh crap, I got to get out of here, right?
Yeah.
Because like, if it's doing that, it must think it's going to win the fight. So, crap, run away.
It's like some fucking Roman shit where it's like it scares you because you're like, oh shit, I don't know what it's thinking in phalanx position, and it breaks your ranks and everyone scatters.
Well, you're worried you're playing against a genius, right? So if it does something confidently, you're like, it must be right. I have to find a new plan.
And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that. I wonder how much of this is actually the human fallibility, like the human fallibility of like being able to be wrong, and you're like, oh my god, I'm like, is this gonna work? Will this work? Could this work? Oh my god, what if it doesn't work? And like self-doubt and this level of which, even TLO, even at the best of times, most likely gets this kind of stuff. Like even playing against players, TLO falls into a trap of, oh my god, self-doubt and time again, where you may second guess yourself and how much that plays a part of, well, AlphaStar isn't second guess itself. If it says it's going to do it, it's going to do it, right? If this is optimum, this is an optimum, period. So, I don't know.
For sure. It's also making like larger decisions, like something that we're not really seeing a lot of in these games is that thing where it goes and retreats, it goes and retreats, it goes and retreats, like we see with some of the bots that we have in ProBots, where there's this like border condition of like, if I'm 6 feet away, I'm safe, but if I'm 5 feet away, I should retreat. Like, and we don't see a lot of that behavior. It's making decisive moves.
Yeah,
and
so
it actually is going.
It's really easy to say, when you have 20 army supply, go attack your opponent, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds like a reasonable thing to have your bot do, right?
Yeah.
But then you move out, you lose a zealot, you drop to 18
you're at
supply,
18.
and then your army goes home. And then you warp in a zealot at home, and now you have 20 supply again. So you turn around, and you lose another zealot, and you just get stuck. And it all came from something that sounded super reasonable, right? Have this much supply, attack. But that means when you don't have this much supply, go home.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and we don't see that, like, at least so far, we're not really seeing that type of behavior where it's indecisive. It goes, it dives, it gets something done. Like, yeah.
And I'd love to know, and I'm not as technical to be able to translate the paper, but I'd love to know how it came to these sort of, in terms of decision making, of what to keep and what to know. Because what we've discussed before in previous, even like inside the scene, other stuff, where you have to assign value. So how does it assign value to even something like a stasis ward as valuable to do versus?
So usually it doesn't, right? It did a bunch of actions. Those actions led to a win. Yeah. So at least for if we simplify it for Leela chess, which is the like Alpha Zero knockoff that plays chess, the community project.
Yeah.
So what Leela does is she plays a game against herself, and one side wins and one side loses. And the side that wins, she says, all of those moves were good. Let's change my numbers a little so that those moves are more likely. And the side that lost, she said, all those moves are bad. Let's change my numbers a little bit so those moves are less likely. And over time, she'll play the good moves and not the bad moves.
Yeah.
Well, chess is, in chess, though, you can assign, or it could assign a value of units, couldn't it? Versus like StarCraft, every unit.
It could, but it doesn't anymore.
It could, but it doesn't. It's hard to say what it's thinking.
It does it in a different way now.
Leela Zero, or are you talking about
the last fight? Well, Leela Zero, but most engines now.
Oh, okay.
Leela Zero in particular. So it used to be, and we see the carriers stop over everything now. It used to be, like in the very first chess engines, humans would tell it knights are worth 3, rooks are worth 5, queens are worth 9, whatever. It eventually evolved to a state where where the engine was telling us, no, I think a knight is worth 2.9 and a bishop's worth 3.1 and a rook is worth 4.95, like whatever. So it was then evaluating, in this situation, this is worth this. Now we're at a state where it doesn't do any of that. It evaluates the position on the board. And it's like, I actually don't care about the value of any of these pieces because they're only valuable to the end of king. Yeah, like the idea is if it did something, it's going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So to use that stasis example, I put a stasis at my third, whether anything hit that stasis or not, and then I won the game. Then it's going to say, it doesn't know the result of any of those individual actions. It doesn't know if that was good or bad or why it won the game or not. It just knew it did it and it won the game. So it's going to take the 60,000 actions it took over the game and says, when I do those things, that's good. And then it will probably do them again. And then it may lose that game. And then it will say, okay, well, the difference between game 1 and game 2 was this. So basically, and then the idea is if you play literally 200 years of StarCraft, which it
eventually
did. So let's say that it played I don't know what that is, millions of games, basically. Then it's got a million things with a million variables that say, a stasis in this thing won 69% of the time, and a expansion before this time won 72% of the time, and it just got a bunch of that shit, and then it learns what it wants to do.
And I think someone had mentioned it before. I don't remember if it was maybe one of our Inside This Scene episodes or when we talked about where the idea of that you don't give it the whole cookie at the end of victory. You give it parts. I don't know, parts of it, you not stagger it, but
so if you know a state. Yeah, if you know a place, if there's something specific you need to encourage it to do that it will not do on its own, then you can partially reward it to encourage it to do the thing, and then it may learn that the thing was good. So there may be behaviors, and I don't know what they did for this, but
Yeah,
let's say,
that may not apply to this specific AlphaStar.
well, let's use as an example that maybe it never knew why it should take gas. It knew that at minerals, it started making minerals, and it knew what it could do with the minerals, but it never understood why it was taking gas. You could reward it for taking gas, and now that it did it, it would then see something it could do with gas that then led to it getting another cookie later.
Oh, I see.
But if you didn't tell it to do that, then it may have never, ever done it.
It doesn't know. It doesn't know
Yeah.
what it doesn't know in many ways.
And I think an example I've talked about, like I think in a past season, is there was a AI thing or a machine learning thing that was, again, based on reinforcement learning, that was taught to play a game like Mario Brothers. And it got to like the third level or third stage, and it was the first stage that it ever encountered where it needed to go left on the screen. Everything else is you go right and you jump, and you go right and you jump. But it never had to learn to go left. So it got stuck on a ledge and it didn't know what to do. But it had never, ever learned that left was good. It had weeded it out as a possibility. So then it had to be told, no, go left once. And then once it was told to go left once, it knew that that was a good idea. And then it could learn to do it the rest of the game. But it was never going to come to the conclusion that
It had to be taught.
It had to be
Before
taught.
this, I wanted to point out something interesting with this game with AlphaStar. I thought I think it's really, I don't know the word cute, but the way that AlphaStar constantly is like testing for weaknesses in like Mana's defense with these adepts. I don't know, just poking, throwing it in. I don't know if it's actually testing. Like, it's my cute way of putting it, but like, oh, this was successful. Wow.
Yeah. And they're bringing up the concept in chat too of negative rewards, and that's a huge thing too. You can't just reward a good thing, you have to punish a bad thing sometimes. Also, you have to punish, there's actually 4, like a matrix of rewards. There's the idea of positive, false positive, negative, and like false negative sort of thing. And so you want to punish it for doing something that led to a loss, but you potentially also want to punish it for not doing something that led to a loss. So like if you said the gas thing, for instance, in this game you didn't take gas, I'm actually going to give you a negative point. So you lost, and you lost when you didn't take gas. So it's a negative to not take it, therefore you should take it. Like, so you can kind of reinforce it on things it didn't do. And so if it wasn't making something, like it was never making a disruptor, and then it's like, you know what, I've never made a disruptor, but I've lost 60% of the games I didn't make a disruptor. Let's make a disruptor. That's a way to encourage it to experiment.
Isn't that kind of like, that's a lot of like almost human intervention in many regards, in terms of like, I don't know if that is that always.
It is, but without being, it's you put it in a possibility space. It is a possibility that you can make a disruptor, and you didn't. And so if you keep winning, then apparently you're right to not make a disruptor. But if you keep losing, then you've got to question whether or not you should. You haven't tried it yet. So whereas if you teach it another way with only positive reinforcement, no negative, it may never experiment in things it never did.
Interesting.
So it's very, and I don't know how they did it, because again, they haven't.
We have to wait for the paper and
but there's many different ways to go about it, and that's an important one.
Hjax, from your perspective here, now we have Mana playing, and he is obviously a ProDOS player. So how do you find that he handles this differently than, say, TLO?
Well, he got killed by AlphaStar's opening this game. The 2 adepts got in, and he thought it was fine because his Phoenix had just finished, and an Oracle flew in at the same time. And AlphaStar inhumanly target fired perfectly with both the adepts and the Oracle at the same time, and killed like 8 probes, and a human would never kill that many probes in that situation. And Mana was just behind, so he counterattacked, and his counterattack got crushed, and now he's sad and he's going to lose.
And it's funny. Okay, so before we did the stream, Endersword and I had this discussion, this idea of, and we also mentioned is the idea of brute force. But how do you account for this perfection? The perfection of clicking, the perfection of targeting, the perfection of, timing. Is that something that can be programmed in? Like, is that like real? Is that a real thing?
You mean as a human? Like, how do you play against
Like,
it?
no, how do you like, how do you tell a bot to be more human in that regard?
It's hard to say, and in fact, that's if you have a good answer to that question, DeepMind will probably pay you money for it.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's true. You're right. That is like a question that they themselves probably are asked.
Yeah.
Because there's that perfect click.
Yeah, and the question too is, do you want to do that?
Good question.
Because you're like, there's obviously some incentive to be like, well, I don't want it to just win on micro, but I also don't want it to be human if being human means being wrong. I want it to be right. I don't want to bias it.
I mean, humans are pretty egocentric, right? We're like, if the computer doesn't do it like us, it must suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then DeepMind recently has been like, wait, what if we remove all the human stuff? Look at how good it can be if we remove all the human stuff. It's like, oh, my poor ego.
Like, there are times when, like, you're playing a human player, DTs walk by their army, and if they were AI, they would see it, but because the human wasn't looking at that spot of the map, they didn't see it.
So the AI that's playing TLO and Mana has global vision the same way.
Yes, I'm sorry. It goes from the top. It has a pulled out version of StarCraft. Pulled out.
It can see everything. The version Mana beat in his show match today has a camera like a normal person, and you'll notice its control and its multitasking was way worse.
Yeah,
because it couldn't micro stalkers flawlessly in 4 locations at once. It no longer had enough attention to do that.
Interesting.
Oh, this is the silly game. I remember this game.
Okay, so we're on. This is game 5 of Mana versus AlphaStar. Was it game 5? Yeah, we're game 5. Yeah, and we told this is one of from Mana himself. This is a game to watch. This is the game to watch.
No, this game's a meme. That's what this game is.
Well,
that's good though.
Yeah, like memes are fun.
It's a good meme, but it's still a meme. This is the kind of bot that's exploitable, in that I bet you could get a like low diamond player to beat this bot if they knew what it did.
Yeah.
So are you guys familiar with the famous Destiny video about sending an overlord in front of your opponent?
Yes.
I know. Give me anybody who doesn't know a little.
Yeah. The magnet. Yeah.
The magnet.
Yeah, the magnet.
So I think this pylon in Mana's base serves that purpose.
Yeah.
In that it's supposed to distract Mana from the robo that is building outside of Mana's base. And it successfully does that, and I imagine it successfully does that against its opponents on the Star League thing.
So wait, so it's trying to like disrupt his attention?
Yeah, there's a thing in your base.
Stalkers here.
Go kill it instead of killing my proxy.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's kind of clever. Like,
it is, but it would only trick you once. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, it worked.
It did work. I don't think it should have worked, but it did work.
Because Mana, instead of marching out, he
if
was
you see
like,
one gate double gas in PvP, you're getting proxied. That's not a surprise. He has a unit advantage here, and he doesn't kill the shield battery that's building, which I thought was pretty sloppy.
and I like that it's taking up position. That's so creepy. Like, it has 2 shield batteries for it to retreat to, but it also has shield battery. It's building shield batteries to push up to.
Yeah.
That's really frightening.
And yeah, you're right. The fact that he didn't take that second one out is criminal.
Yeah, he could have killed that battery.
You know what though? I think part of this, and to Mana's credit, I think there's a level of which I don't think he underestimated, but I think he is constantly surprised by it.
Yeah.
I feel like there are elements where he's like,
He may have written this off, like a bot doesn't do this.
yes, that's what I mean. That's what I wanted to obviously to his defense, there's a level where I imagine Mana doesn't know the capability of the bot. Like, even though he's just played it, he doesn't know that it can be tricky, right?
Sure.
Well, and again, he played a different one.
Oh,
So-
this is the immortal that it kills. It kills its own immortal. You see that?
Yeah. Or it just kills itself.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder why it made that decision. I wonder if it made me just like,
He was worried it was going to be captured. No prisoners.
do you want to rewind? Because you will do
You want to
something.
rewind to that?
I can sync up with the stream. It's fine.
All right, doesn't matter.
Let's go see that again, man. Tara, bring us back. It's weird though that you would have come to the conclusion that strategy was good. Like,
I mean,
how do
again,
you trick other bots to like be? I guess never mind. That's not true. If you put a pylon down, a bot would get like. Okay.
Funny. Yeah, he didn't want to take him prisoner. It was behind a force field. If it was captured, then it was going to spill the beans about the Stargate on the low ground.
Maybe
So
it's
they
not
had
an
to kill him.
open AI and it wanted to deny him.
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe you shouldn't get the EXP or gold. I should, and thus denied.
But it is kind of an interesting thing of like, how do you then stumble upon this? But, and I think that's the biggest thing about like whether you go by example or not too, is like, there's certain things that left to yourself, you would never try. You could play a billion years of StarCraft and you would never do this thing, so you would never find out if it's good.
I mean, kill
Now,
your.
now let's watch Mana throw. He actually was winning this game until he somehow loses a fight with 2 immortals versus 1 because he gets out microed really hard.
Yeah. This.
And a lot of this actually seems to come down just to the technical aspect of the guy just chasing him down.
And it has very good micro, but like...
One
Mana
thing
was
to always
winning.
remember too is that like AlphaStar can't be tilted, right? So
Well, that too. Yeah.
like I imagine there's a point where you're like, as a pro player, you losing to it is, I don't want to say the word embarrassing, but like,
Yeah.
you know, to you it feels embarrassing, right? And this is the 5th game, right? You've lost 4-0. Like a lot of players against players get tilted after 3 games. Right? So now you're
back against this thing, I'd be like, let me play it again.
I want to hear from you about your AI project. If you're working on a machine learning bot and it's gone and done something a little bit unexpected or weird, and I want to hear about it. Let me know what's gone wrong. Until next time though, may the bugs be ever in your favor.